All right. I believe we are live for the DFS Discourse Show Week 12 edition NFL Fantasy Football Show. Thank you all for joining us on this Black Friday edition. I, as usual, am one of your hosts for this afternoon. My name is Jesse Clark. You can find me over on Twitter at jcrockett24, and I am joined by my co-host, as usual, Joe Andre. Joe, thanks for joining us. I'll let you plug your information, and let's get rocking.
Yeah, so you guys can find me at Twitter at FFJVAPHL. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. We saw Deshaun Watson put on the show. We saw the Cowboys absolutely get demolished. It was quite embarrassing. I can't remember the last time the Cowboys lost 2 Thanksgiving games in a row, but I mean, they got destroyed by Buffalo last year, and they got absolutely demolished by Antonio Gibson. Man, he's the real deal. I think we got a stud running back in Washington for the first time since, man, it's been a while. But no, it was
that was a fun little Thanksgiving Day slate. Would have really have loved to have that night game slate there to kind of even out some ownership and make it even a little bit more intriguing. But I didn't play heavy at all. I knew 2-game slate. There's just too much that can go wrong, and I was just like, I'll just put a couple bucks in and see what happens. And I basically, lost almost everything I put in. It was kind of expected. But week 11 offered an interesting slate as well. We were kind of just discussing before we went live here. There was a lot to be had last week, and I think a lot could have gone right for us. We had a lot of good calls, I believe, and a lot of interesting, bold takes that we could have applied to tournaments that it sounds like both of us kind of overthought our lineups and tinkered a little bit too much and changed some things at the last minute. Whereas if we would have just kind of kept with our initial research and analysis, we could have really had a big week. So all in all, kind of a little bit of a down week for us. I know me particularly, I lost a little bit. I didn't lose a ton, but just a really disappointing week because I think it could have been one of those huge weeks and we didn't have that. So I think speaking with you prior to this, you kind of had a similar week, Joe, right?
Yeah. The name Logan Thomas will be redacted from this forward. But then he goes off yesterday. I'm just like, I hate my life. This dude is killing me all year.
Too, dude.
Yeah, another flop flag. He's barely getting 2 points last week. Now he has 2 touchdowns on the ground yesterday. Ugh. Glad to see they got out of their funk.
Yeah, it was a disappointing 2 weeks really for a lot of our hits and misses over the last 2 weeks, kind of flip-flop. And that's always the worst feeling when you make a call one week and then they come to fruition the next week. But, all in all, it was a decent week 11. I think we're getting on the right track here with a lot of these calls. So if we can just stay the course here, not get discouraged, and just understand that our process isn't right for a lot of these. And, it's kind of just a matter of putting all the pieces together into the same lineup and watching it hit. So, I think we have some promise coming into these last few weeks of the regular season. And I'm hoping one of us can hit a big tournament here, have a big week, and really pay off some of the good analysis that I think we've been putting in. So that being said, I think we're pretty much ready to move on to the week 12 analysis. A lot of it's going to have to do with these injuries, man. We've had a ton of injuries unexpectedly and COVID issues coming into the week 12. And, a lot of value is going to open up, and that could sway a lot of the percentages for ownership as well. So I don't know if you wanted to discuss a few of the main injuries. Maybe we can kind of just feed some names back and forth and discuss those, and then maybe discuss how we expect that to impact the ownership.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start with the injury news that just came out of Jacksonville. So now we have, well, it's on both sides of the ball too. I mean, they're going to be missing both Sidney Jones and C.J. Henderson on the in the secondary, but more importantly, as it relates to us, they're going to be missing Chris Conley and DJ Chark, which opens up value at Keelan Cole, who's 3,600, and we got Laviska Shenault coming back into the mix. He's at the bare minimum $3,000.
I think he's 3-3. I just looked actually.
3-3. Yeah, still very affordable if you're trying to jam in some high priced guys. But yeah, you got Shenault and Conley there. Then we had John Brown that was declared out probably around like a few hours ago, and now you have Gabriel Davis sitting at the stone cold minimum at 3,000. So a lot of the games we're going to discuss are going to have, again, like Jesse said, whether it's COVID impacts, whether it's just straight non-COVID injury news, there's value open up everywhere, and it's definitely just going to be important to pay attention to the those final injury reports that do come out later this afternoon.
Absolutely. Just a few other names to kind of watch out for. We've had Gurley and Hayden Hurst not practice all week for Atlanta. That's supposed to be a high-scoring affair with the Raiders. So keep an eye out on them. Keep an eye out on Julio Jones as well, who was banged up last week in the middle of the game. That could open up some things with Calvin Ridley. Can you imagine if Hurst and Julio and Gurley are all out, how many targets Ridley's going to get? So those are just some names to keep an eye out for. Also, Ahmed for the Dolphins starting running back for the last couple weeks has been ruled out. It's uncertain whether Gaskin is going to be back this week. That's kind of been floated out there. They're not quite sure. It's, that's something to monitor. We have guys like Breida and maybe Patty Laird and DeAndre Washington that would open up for cheap value there. We had the news on Gio Bernard with the concussion, so that's uncertain. He has been practicing in a limited fashion Thursday and I believe today as well. So that's still uncertain, but obviously Samaje Perine would open up a bare minimum 4K price tag there. That would be good value. So there's value to be had all around the league. I believe Kalen Ballage as well is banged up there with the Chargers. So we have some question marks there. Are there any other any other spots that I'm neglecting? Oh, the one in Minnesota you mentioned obviously is a huge one before you mentioned before the podcast, and that's just Adam Thielen's status for the COVID situation. That could obviously impact Justin Jefferson pretty drastically. Might also funnel some targets over there to Dalvin Cook, some extra targets. So just some names to keep an eye out on. Are there any others that are obvious that I neglected to bring up?
I think you got the main gist of it, and I do fully expect that we're going to get some more injury reports coming in while we are live this afternoon. So if we do get anything, we'll definitely bring that news to you guys.
Absolutely. So that's probably the most important thing to track closely over these next 24 hours. That could drastically change some of this analysis. That could drastically change lineup builds overall. So something to track closely. And that being said, let's move on to some of our prime time matchups of the week. We typically discuss 3 or 4 matchups that are probably going to garner the most ownership and or just games in general that me and Joe think are good pivot points that could also be blow up spots, breaking down thoroughly about 3 or 4 matchups of the week. So, Joe, I'll let you kind of introduce the first game, and we'll go from there.
All right, so we're going to start with the Chargers and the Bills. Big congratulations to the Chargers. They finally won a game. Did not end up blowing it some magical way they've done all year. But, again, everybody's beat the Jets, so there's no surprise there. Herbert just continues to perform impressively as he has his whole rookie year. Bills coming to this game off a bye after that just stunning upset with Kyler to DeAndre in the end zone off the Hail Mary as they're calling it. But yeah, this is definitely one of the faster paced games of the week. Both teams like to throw the ball early and often. We got Keenan Allen projected at 19% after his big week that he just flat out destroyed a Jets scenario that had nobody there to stop him. Just flat out smash spot for him. That was one of the things that Jesse did get right last week. That was a great call. Other side of the ball, Diggs has done it all year. I mean, Diggs and Allen just target after target after target. I mean, he knows who he likes. Definitely one of the more underrated guys is Cole Beasley. I mean, he's seen double-digit fantasy points in 7 of 10 games this season. He has been an important cog towards the Bills' offense. I could see him getting some increased targets, being that John Brown's out this week. Again, we discussed Gabriel Davis, and yeah, this game definitely projects to be one of the higher scoring affairs. It's definitely the best of the 1 o'clock games that I'm curious to see on my end. I'll let you take it, Jesse. What are you thinking in regards to, I guess, more or less, can the Chargers keep up here with the Bills?
Can they keep up? I don't know. That's a good question. But the Bills have shown that they have been more than willing to chuck it around the yard. And maybe John Brown being out will cause a few drives to not end in scores, but maybe end in field goals to kind of keep this thing a little more close than usual. We've discussed on multiple occasions. That's why we liked Herbert so much last week is, dude, the Chargers have shown this entire year. We were worried earlier in the year against the game in Jacksonville. They will keep the game close in any way, shape, or form that they can, and they won't blow anybody out. They are incapable of blowing anybody out. So obviously this is definitely going to be more of a concern on the Buffalo side of things, I would say, than the Chargers side of things. But you said it, these two teams play at a really fast pace, both air it out. I like this game from a fantasy perspective, especially because both of the running games aren't really super strong in their own right. So I think both of these teams know their strengths are in the passing game. And honestly, the opposing team's weakness in the passing game has been exploited throughout the year as well. So I love Josh Allen. I love Justin Herbert in this game. In fact, they're probably only 2 out of maybe my 4 quarterbacks on the entire week that I'm actually going to be willing to plug into lineups. And, I'm probably going to play both of these guys. I obviously love Diggs. I think he's going to be targeted heavily with John Brown out. The one thing I did notice about Beasley that I'm a bit concerned about is the fact that as leaky as this Chargers secondary has been, they've actually given up the least production to the slot this year to opposing teams. So I don't know if I should be reading into that too much or whether I should just be playing Beasley for the volume. So that's a spot that I'm not entirely sure yet whether I'm going to go to Beasley or Gabriel Davis. But I do like stacking 2 of these wide receivers together with a wide receiver from the Chargers, whether it be Mike Williams or Keenan Allen, with one of the passing options, the quarterbacks from this game. And I love this game as just a huge game stack. We've discussed several times the way you take down tournaments, you have to have big game stacks. And this is a week, last week we didn't think so much. Last week we thought we could spread it around a little bit more. There wasn't one game in particular that stuck out as like the key game that you had to game stack. This week is different for me. This is the game. This is the game for me.
Yeah, and I guess one thing on Cole Beasley, so Desmond King, I mean, he was their primary slot guy. He now has moved on to the Titans. So Beasley's going to see a little bit more of Tavon Campbell. Been solid so far this year. I think that it's definitely a situation we might be able to expose a little bit. Desmond King had performed very decently in the slot for the Chargers. That Chargers defense, even before this season, we looked at the additions they had made to that secondary. They had signed Chris Harris from the Broncos. You have Joey Bosa on the front line, of course. He's been their staple there. But I think my perception of that defense was that they were going to be a pretty good one this year, and they barely lived up to that expectation. They've been flat out awful, where I would say I think Josh Allen is my favorite play at quarterbacks this week. I mean, it's set up for him to really go off again, kind of like in the way he just did against the Seahawks 3 weeks ago. I mean, there's nobody that's pretty much going to stop him in the sense that even if they were to kind of slow him down through the air, he always has this rushing upside. I mean, he's one of the best high floor, high ceiling quarterbacks on this week's slate. I mean, I'm very, very excited to play him, whether it be you could play more of him naked, I think, last year. I mean, he's just thrown it so much with Diggs. He's done so much with Diggs that I think you have to pair him with. You have to pair him with at least a single stack, maybe even the double. I mean, Gabriel Davis' price is so cheap. Even Beasley's not that far price. He's I believe he's 5,500. Where that combo of those two barely it's not even over $21,000. Oh, here it is. We got some big news actually out of that game. Casey Hayward has been declared out, as well as Melvin Ingram.
Wow.
Yeah, like we said, we knew these reports are going to come, but yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, Casey Hayward and Melvin Ingram both out. So man, that
Diggs
bump
to
up
the
Diggs
moon
on that. Yep, bump up Diggs for sure.
You know, you mentioned something in your analysis, which I actually thought was very, very good. I wanted to kind of applaud you for this, and something that we maybe should discuss at more length. The reason these two offenses are so good to play and why they are make to be a very viable game stack option is because the offensive weapons are so condensed. You know, when Josh Allen's airing it out, he's going to Diggs, he's going to Beasley. Like it's predictable. You know, when Herbert's airing it out, he loves throwing it to Keenan Allen. He'll hit Mike Williams on a few big plays, and then it's Hunter Henry. You know, Buffalo basically doesn't even have a tight end. So, you know, these options are so condensed, especially with John Brown out, that's another reason why this game makes such a good game stack, is because the options are condensed and they're predictable, and the volume is there for these options to be had. So that's why I like this game stack. I like Diggs even more this week. I'm honestly wondering if, you know, the only question mark to this game that I can't put my finger on is Hunter Henry. I kind of missed on him last week, not thinking that he had the upside that we needed from him. But, you know, he's just so hard to play consistently because the upside seems to be limited. But he scored last week. He could put you up 16 points, 16, 17 DraftKings points. And at tight end, it's about all we need. So that's the one question mark in this game that I'm not quite sure I have figured out yet.
Yeah, the thing with Hunter Henry, I mean, he hasn't lost you weeks. I mean, he's been actually probably one of the more relatively consistent tight ends on the year. It's just he hasn't had the Waller week. He hasn't had the Kelsey week. And I don't know if he's going to get there. I mean, he's a nice floor. I mean, I guess the best way to describe him is probably low floor, medium ceiling. He's not going to. I don't think he's not going to win you a GPP. I guess that's just my concern there.
Yeah, I hear you there. And there are a lot of other options in this game that we like too much to where you might want to just go cheaper at tight end and play it that way. So is there anything else that we missed about this game? I can't emphasize enough. This is the game, I think, to stack. In fact, I think one of these other games that we're going to discuss, and Joe and I haven't even really discussed this prior to the show. You're going to find out live on air, Joe. There's one game in here that I'm almost completely fading here. That's going to be pretty popular, I think. So I'll let you go on to the next game, and then we can kind of discuss.
Yeah, if I'm thinking the way you're thinking here, it's going to be that Raiders-Falcons game. Yeah, so that game opened as a pick'em, and with all this injury news coming out of the Falcons side of the ball, the Raiders are now 3-point favorites. The total is also going down 1.5 since open too. Raiders, I mean, you got to give the Raiders this. I mean, they dueled the Chiefs very well twice this season. They split the season series with the Chiefs. Definitely another good showing from Derek Carr. It'd be nice to see. There's a good chance they'll probably face each other in the playoffs again for a third time. Just that additional seed there. So if the Chiefs did fall as the 2, and then the Raiders more are likely going to fall in as at that 6 or 7, there's gonna be a round 3 of that series there. But yeah, the big story out of this game is just the injuries on the Atlanta side. Looks like Julio is, what did you say? He was limited yesterday and today, right? Was that
correct?
Yep.
I'm not sure if today's, I don't think today's has come out yet. I think it was Wednesday and Thursday was what I read.
Yep. Yeah, so we're waiting for today. So he was limited on Wednesday and Thursday. Initial feel, I don't know if he's suiting up here, but Matt Ryan definitely needs him to suit up because Matt Ryan's production has definitely depends on Julio playing. The 2 games that he was without Julio, just straight awful. The one game against Carolina, the one game against Chicago, even that game, the game total, but it wasn't because of Ryan's, because it was all done on the ground with Todd Gurley. Even that Monday night contest in Week 4 when Julio played, but he eventually left, it's just straight awful. And here's other news too. Anthony Lynn says Austin Eckler has a chance to play this week.
Oh gosh, that'll confuse things.
Yeah, yes it will. But again, we were discussing Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is another one. He's going to be out looks like he's going to be out this week. Todd Gurley, more or less, if you have Brian Hill in redraft on waivers, I would definitely be trying to acquire him at this point. I haven't seen what his price is on DK. I'd have to imagine he's no more than 4,500. I'd be surprised.
He's 4,000. He's 4,000. I have it up right now. Yep.
So stone cold minimum. Yeah, the way I could see this game going, just as inefficient as the Falcons have been without Julio, it sets up for a game where Josh Jacobs could really go off in this spot. I mean, Josh Jacobs in games that the Raiders win, absolute just smashes. In the games that they lose, non-existent. So if this game,
he's questionable too. Did you see that?
No, jeez. That puts Devontae Booker on the radar there, and Devontae Booker's another one who had a decent start 2 weeks ago against the Broncos. That was like a Jacobs, Devontae Booker just thrashing on the ground of that defense.
So he was added to the injury report on Thursday. He did practice on Wednesday, but he was limited on Thursday with the hip injury. So that's the story with Jacobs. Yeah,
that's definitely one to monitor too, because I do like Jacobs a lot in this spot if he can suit up there. Because
Booker's 4,000.
Now this week's getting a little bit too much. We were discussing this actually before we even go on the podcast.
This game might have too much value to where I wanted to fade it, and now I might have to play some of these guys.
Yes. I love when there's wide receiver value, because when there's running back value, everybody fades the running back value more than receiver value. Now it's just getting me a little antsy here, because I mean, now you got Brian Hill there. You might have Devontae Booker, Wayne Gallman's 5,000 in a good spot too, without Joe Burrow in that offense. We got some stuff opening up here. But yeah, back to the Falcons-Raiders game. But yeah, if this game plays how I think it's going to play, it sets up for pretty much what should be a Raiders victory. But I want to get Jesse's thoughts on this. And Texans have released Kenny Stills.
Yeah, I just saw that. I was going to full fade this game. I think both of these offenses have a tendency to be really ugly at times, where I could just see, Matt Ryan having a game where Julio's not there, Hurst isn't there, he gets pressured, has a pick six early, just kind of throws it out the window. And then we've seen Derek Carr and his inconsistency. One day he'll throw 3 touchdowns, and the next guy, the next day he'll throw 1 touchdown to his third string fullback that nobody expected. So, I'm definitely off the passing games in this game unless Julio and Hurst are out, and then Ridley definitely opens up as a viable play. I'm not sure I want to touch Gage, Zacchaeus, or any of those guys, because we've seen this year we can't predict. We don't know which guy's going to blow up in the absence of these top wide receivers. So I'm just not even going to go there. There's too many other cheap options that are much more viable than those guys. And then from the running game perspective, I think I'm going to be out on both sides unless we have injuries. So if Gurley is out, that definitely makes Brian Hill a play. And if Jacobs is out, that definitely puts Booker into play as well. So I don't want to say I'm writing off this game completely just because of all the injuries that we have, but I was initially thinking I was going to full fade this game.
Yeah, I was with you on that too. But again, it's definitely making sure you pick the right side of the ball. If you think the Falcons going to win this game, then it's Brian Hill. But if you think it's going to be the Raiders winning this game, it's Devontae Booker for me. And I think that's where I'm going to be going if that scenario does play out there. And that might be the only thing I touch there. Julio, Hurst, and Gurley all being out, targets have to go somewhere. But again, like Jesse said, the 1 week, I think it was back in week 3. Yeah, it was week 3 against the Bears. We thought it was going to be Zacchaeus. It ended up being Christian Blake. The 1 week we thought it was going to be Russell Gage, and ended up being Brandon Powell. It's like you just can't get a gauge of who it's going to be other than Julio and Ridley. So
here's the thing to keep in mind. I'm sorry to cut you off here, but your call on Booker is actually a good one. But something else to keep in mind that would make it an even better play. Last week, Jalen Richard sat out. He was injured, and
that's right.
If he's out again with Jacobs, that leads all the rushing and the receiving work to go to Booker as well, which was just, make him almost like a lock button play, I feel like. at 4K minimum. So something to keep an eye out on. It looks like Richard did have a limited practice on Wednesday. I'm not sure if they practiced on Thanksgiving Day or not. I'm not seeing any practice reports for the Thursday practice, but just something to keep an eye out on. If Jacobs does sit out, you'll also want to take a look at Jalen Richard as well for that Booker play.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely keep an eye on him too. Because like Jesse said, all the receiving work goes to Booker if Richard sits again.
Absolutely. So that's pretty much my 2 cents on this game. Unless you had something else to add, I think we can probably move on to the next one.
Yeah, let's go to the Panthers and the Vikings. Panthers completely just decimated the Lions last week. The Lions going to get nothing going on. Galladay and Amendola all being out. We saw it on Sunday and we saw it yesterday. It's definitely hurt. It's definitely hurt Matthew Stafford that whole offense, missing those 2 pieces. Minnesota side of the ball, they got it going last week. I mean, of course, Dalvin Cook's all about a free space. Dalvin Cook at 9,500 is still too cheap. He touches the ball over 30 times. I mean, at this point right now, he should be at 10. He should be at minimum 10K. I mean, we're talking about Christian McCaffrey usage at this point. So I think this will be the last time we see him at 4 figures before he does go, 10,000 and beyond. But yeah, as we discussed at the beginning of the show, big thing we got to wait on right now is the Adam Thielen news, because if he does sit out, a lot of volume's going Justin Jefferson's way at 6,300. He was stellar last week again. He's just been absolutely flawless in a rookie campaign. I mean, I think who was it that compared him? Somebody compared him to Calvin Johnson at this point. I forget who it was, but I saw that. But I'm like, damn, he is that good. I mean, my goodness, that dude's a beast. But yeah, so this game, the total is climbing. It started at 59. It is 49. It's at 51.5. So odds makers are seeing that there's going to be points in this game. One thing I would say of note in terms of ownership on this game, we've seen Curtis Samuel have some really, really big spots here. He's projected to have the highest of the ownerships between him, DJ Moore, and Robbie Anderson. Little did I know that DJ Moore, I mean, he quietly has the 5th most receiving yards among receivers in football. I saw that on the ticker last week. I'm like, wow, how did they do that? I mean, he's had some god-awful weeks, but he's just accumulated yards. But like I said, I mean, Samuel's had a nice little hot streak going. I mean, can he do it 3 weeks in a row? I guess it would be 4 out of 5. Tough to say, but seeing that he's going to be the higher owned of the 3 kind of gives me a little bit of pause. I almost rather go Moore or Robbie in this case and be contrarian.
Ooh, something else that we didn't discuss that I just read here on these updates. It looks like Chris Harris might have a chance to play this week as well, which could change some things a bit. I haven't tracked him close enough to know whether he's going to play outside or slot, but that could definitely change some things. If he does play slot, I like Beasley a lot less than
Absolutely.
I did. So just something to keep an eye out on. Your analysis, spot on. I don't know that I've told you my bold call of the week for that has a direct connection to this game.
All right, let's see.
Robbie Anderson's going off this week. I'm just going to make the bold call here. He has not scored since week 1. He has one touchdown.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, he has one touchdown on the entire year. It was week 1. He has the most air yards in the entire league with that few touchdowns. So that touchdown regression is coming. We don't know when it is, but it's coming soon. And this Minnesota pass defense has been absolutely awful this entire year. Teddy's back. He loves him some Robbie. That's my bold call of the week. I think Robbie either goes for over 100 and a touchdown potentially. Either that or he gets close to 100 and has 2 touchdowns. So I love me some Robbie Anderson this week. I need to find a way to get him into some of these lineups. But
there's ways. Don't worry. There's plenty of ways. As we keep learning, even as this hour goes. Don't worry. We got more.
That's true.
Coming in.
That's true. The problem with this week might be the fact that there's just going to be too many options opening up. And you know me, you've known me, you haven't known me long, but you've known me long enough to know that I hate when I have too many freaking options. It plays with my mind. And I constantly tinker with things and want to get too many guys in. So I need to convince myself it's not about if this guy can go off and he's not in your lineup. Don't be scared about that. And this is a good lesson to be had for everybody else as well. You shouldn't be scared that you're going to have X guy that's not in your lineup that's going to go off. What you need to be concerned about is that other guys in that similar price range go off for your team as well. So you shouldn't necessarily be concerned with somebody else going off on another person's roster. It's all about your roster construction and your build. As long as you have more guys on your team that goes off than that person has, then you shouldn't be too worried about missing out on, a big game from somebody. So that being said, huge Robbie Anderson fan this week. It's hard not to like Mike Davis in this matchup as well. Minnesota has been awful defensively in all facets. They gave up a big game against Zeke last week. Big bounce back spot. But here's the problem, man. He is 6,900. He's really gotten up there. It was so much easier to play him earlier in the year when DraftKings wasn't adjusting his price the way that they should have with Christian McCaffrey being out. And it's just been tough of late with him. So paying 6,900 is going to be tough for him, I think, given our other options, but he is in a really good spot. So I just wanted to mention Mike Davis there as well.
Yeah, my concern with him, I wrote him up a little bit this week in my snaps and usage article. His targets just haven't been there at least the last 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, he had been, so the last 5 games, he's only seen 4 targets per game, where he was getting peppered those previous 5. He was even seeing at least 7. I mean, that's concerning for me too in that sense. I mean, I would like Mike Davis a little bit more if I knew he was going to get some consistent targets, but they just haven't been there these last few weeks. I guess that's the one hole I would poke with him.
Absolutely. But one thing as far as a stackability standpoint from this game is, and I don't know if this has changed or maybe you've updated this and I haven't seen it in your snaps and usage report yet. I haven't looked at your article this week that you released, but I know earlier in the year we discussed the propensity of Carolina to really play much faster when they're playing from behind, and they play much slower when they're playing from ahead. Minnesota's a 3.5-point favorite in this game. So that leads us to think maybe they could play at a faster pace. So that being said, we're going to need that type of game script, because the thing with Minnesota is we know how slow they play. And if somehow Carolina plays slow and Minnesota doesn't play all that fast either, that could be the downside of this game. But if Minnesota gets up early and can milk the clock with Dalvin and Carolina can play fast, this game does have a potential for a shootout. We have a lot of just bad defensive matchups this week, it seems like, and both of these teams don't have really great defenses. The one thing I did want to mention about Carolina's D, the stats would show that they have given up very few big plays on the year, and they're almost like a bend but don't break defense. They are very leaky. They'll give up tons of yardage, but they don't always give up a ton of points, because they just have a philosophy from the defensive standpoint to limit those big plays. And that's what Kirk Cousins in the passing game, especially Jefferson, has thrived on this year, is creating those big plays, play action pass, deep down the field. That's the kind of pass game that they have. So that's the one thing I think I would worry about. But both of these defenses are bad enough for these offenses to capitalize, and we're kind of just hoping for a little bit faster pace than what we would typically anticipate from these two teams.
Yeah, I think your concern's definitely valid, Jesse. I mean, just the way Minnesota likes to run the ball, could definitely be one of those games where Minnesota just, especially if they do take the lead, they just run the ball, drain the clock. We need Carolina to kind of take a lead in this game, where we think it's going to be a little bit faster paced and get some more fantasy goodness out of that game. Anybody
sticking out to you in this game particularly?
I just want to see what happens with Thielen. Jefferson right now is at 11%. I know his ownership's going to climb if Thielen does miss. I mean, that's my one hole there, but it's a pretty good spot for Justin Jefferson. I mean, he's done it against everybody. I do like your Robbie call.
Do you think if Thielen misses that either of these tight ends for Minnesota are in play?
Yeah, let me pop that up real quick. I got my laptop here too. I mean, if I had to pick between one of the two, I think I'd have a little bit more conviction. I mean, don't get me wrong. The idea of playing Rudolph would give me, it gives me pause, but I think he probably would be the better of the two options. I know Irv Smith had that 2-touchdown game the other week, but let's go to their snaps real quick. I just want to see where they're at. I believe Rudolph has still seen more snaps than
Irv Smith missed last week's game. Keep that in mind. He has been nicked up.
Yeah, if I had to pick between the two, even without even getting to Minnesota right now, not yet. Yeah, I think I'm still going Rudolph on that spot. Like, again, I'm not loving it by any means, but yeah, I think I would go Irv Smith or Kyle Rudolph there.
Yeah, actually, Irv Smith is doubtful this week, so that kind of just opens things up completely. And in fact, just to give you guys some insight here, so we have Rudolph's 2,800 on DraftKings. So that I'm kind of glad we had that kind of talk that out, because that does open up an option at the tight end position. We've discussed it all year. We might as well just if I had a quarter next to me, I'd take it out and flip it a couple times just to kind of. What happened?
Ravens Steelers is moved to Tuesday night, if they even get it in Tuesday night.
Man, I hope they play, just for the fantasy implications late in the season for season-long leagues. It doesn't impact us, obviously, from a DFS perspective. But man, from season-long leagues, that would impact a ton of things. Just the fact that the Steelers would now have 2 games that they hadn't played. Maybe they play week 18, but that doesn't matter. I mean, week 16 is when most fantasy playoffs are finished. So,
well, the bigger impact is going to be because the Ravens were supposed to play Thursday night against the Cowboys. That looks like that game is going to be moved to Sunday. So you're going to get the Cowboys and Ravens on the main slate next week. That's probably the bigger impact in terms of for us for DFS. Yeah, so Steelers Ravens is going to be off this main slate for sure. So definitely don't roster those guys at this point now. But it looks like it's going to be Cowboys Ravens on the main slate next week. Just again, something we'll have to work out later in the week.
Absolutely. Do we have any other games?
We do. We got the big one in Tampa. We got the Chiefs and the Bucks. It's Brady Mahomes round 4. We've had, I believe Brady's taken 2 out of the first 3. Of course, Mahomes winning the last one back in week 14 last year. So yeah, ownership. I mean, I'm curious to see how the ownership's going to fall in the sense that there's so much value on the slate. Buffalo Chargers is definitely the number 1 option for me, with this game being the number 2. So we were talking about how like the Bills and the Chargers have the more condensed options. With the Bucks, they have like an array of options over there, where if it's not Godwin 1 week, it's Antonio Brown. If it's not Antonio Brown, it's Evans. It's just so hard to determine who you are going to pair Brady with. I mean, he has so many options to go to that from a DFS perspective, it's just maddening. Even from a season-long perspective, it's maddening too. Brown just being there complicates things. I mean, he just saw 13 targets last week. I mean, it just.
I'm telling you, he is bound for a huge game here coming up. He's the cheapest out of the options. He's 5,700. So honestly, if we get Chris Harris in the slot against Beasley, I wouldn't mind pivoting from Beasley at 5,500 over to Antonio Brown at 5,700. That's a really close price point pivot there that would actually lend itself pretty well, in my opinion. So, Levitan, I don't know if you saw Adam Levitan's tweet earlier this week, but it was actually hilarious. He said, you don't invite a known psychotic human being into your own house to live with you and not target him once he signs with your team.
I did see that, yes.
So, it's a good point. And, I just think Antonio Brown's going to get his targets, and him and Tom feel comfortable to me. The problem with this game is I honestly think both defenses are actually fairly good. And Tampa Bay's defense is probably even better than the Chiefs, I would imagine, just based on the numbers. But the problem with this game is the defenses are just kind of tripping me up. I don't know where to attack this game, even though I do think both offenses could be high powered, and it could be an absolute shootout if it goes the way that the air it out approach could lend itself to this game. So I just don't have any strong convictions, kind of like you were saying, as to which weapons it's going to be. That's the problem.
Yes, I mean, we know how good the Bucs have been against just overall rushing attacks. I mean, the Bucs are one of 3 teams that haven't allowed a 100-yard game to any running back core this year, along with the Niners and the Falcons. So we know what the Chiefs are going to do. They're going to throw the ball. I mean, they're going to throw the ball, whether it be to Hill, to Kelsey. It looks like Watkins is even on track to play this game. He's 4,700, so he's another cheap option. Even the Chiefs have gotten a little better at stopping a run too. I mean, they were giving up about like 4.7 yards on the ground per carry, and now they've kind of shored up a little bit to 4.4. So this game has the potential to kind of be one of those air it out kind of games. I think I have a stronger conviction of that on the Chiefs side of the ball than I do the Buccaneers side of the ball. But
you like Kelsey or Hill?
I'm getting kind of tired of playing this guessing game at tight end where I don't mind paying up for Kelsey. I mean, I was surprised to see Waller's going to be higher than Kelsey in terms of the projections right now. But yeah, I mean, you're paying up for Kelsey, but at least you're locking in a solid floor there. I mean, there's decent plays at the position. I mean, I like Waller, but again, like we discussed, that could be more of a one-sided game where it's just a running attack. So Waller's not going to get his targets. You also have other options like here. Let me pull it up real quick. We can poke holes in all these guys, but the point being, it's so hard to poke any holes in Travis Kelsey at this point. Again, Hunter Henry. The good thing about Hunter Henry is he's seeing touchdown regression too. He's had 2 touchdowns the last 2 games, so that's good to see there. Evan Ingram, I like him a lot more than Joe Burrows in that game, where I don't know how efficient the Bengals offense is going to be, where the Giants can run the ball against Cincinnati's poorest rush defense. Gronk, like we were just talking about, so many weapons in Tampa. I don't know where we're going there. That's the thing with Kelsey. That's the thing you get with Kelsey is you're locking in a floor. And then from there, you just see where he lands after you get your at least minimum of 10 points. I mean, he's seen double-digit fantasy points in all but 1 game this year. The only game he didn't was against the Broncos. But again, that was just a weird situation where the Chiefs had a defensive and a special teams touchdown. So, I mean, that just took away from all the offensive players' ceilings that game. So, yeah, I mean, favorite play on the Chiefs side of the ball is definitely going to be Kelsey. It's a lot easier to get to him now, especially with all the value that we've just talked about too. I mean, if you just want to just not have to worry about, is this dude going to get me to 15 or is he going to get me like, geez, just a 10? Kelsey's your guy, and he's a lot easier to get to now.
Yeah, I think we need to not be so concerned about the 3x, 4x value type thing at the tight end position, because it's so much of a crapshoot. But long story short on this game with our analysis, we're kind of off the running game for both of these games. We're definitely attacking the pass game for both of these teams. If we're going to, I need to really dig into this one to make up my mind as to which plays I actually like. I do think I'm going to have a lineup where I stack this game for sure, because there's just too much upside to be had to miss out on. But I don't think that this is going to be like, okay, this is my core 4. I'm going to get these guys in like every single lineup, just because there's so much uncertainty as to who these guys, which guys are going to be the ones that hit. So for that reason, I'm probably going to have a little bit lower ownership from like a game stack standpoint to this game, but I'll still have some pieces floated here and there. So unless you have anything else to add, I think we can probably go just position by position here to round us out and finish us out the show.
Yeah, let's get it.
All right. So at quarterback, for me, pretty simple. It's Herbert. It's Josh Allen. It's one of these quarterbacks in the Kansas City Tampa Bay game, and it's Taysom Hill. Those are the only guys I'm playing at quarterback.
Yeah, I'm just concerned with I guess it's an AC joint sprain for Kyler Murray. That gives me a little pause. I do like the spot. I guess the other hole you could poke in that game is like the Patriots just like to run the ball so much. It just reduces the opportunities that Murray's going to have the ball and create havoc. But yeah, I'm kind of off Murray a little bit this week. Love the talent, love the player. I just don't love the matchup, and I just don't love him in this situation. I guess, Derek Carr in the beginning of the week looked great, but again, the Falcons side of the ball just completely collapsed. And I mean, 5,700 is such a great price, but I don't even know if it gets to 3x, if it's just going to be a Jacobs, if it's going to be a Booker, if it's going to be whoever it's going to be running the ball throughout that game.
Yeah, just watch. Henry Ruggs is going to freaking break out in this game after everybody. wrote him off. He's going to blow up out of nowhere.
If the Giants were, the Giants are actually playing very solid on defense. That if I knew that we could probably even kind of try to work Ryan Finley in there, I would, but I can't. Not this week. Giants have actually been very solid on that defensive side of the ball. It's just not an option for me. Even Brandon. Not even Brandon.
Yeah, it's Allen. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. Brandon Allen, he only had like a 6.13 yards per attempt. Him being there, if that kills anybody, that kills T. Higgins. That deep threat's all but gone with Brandon Allen in that freaking line.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Is there any other quarterbacks you're going to?
No, if I'm getting anybody, I'm paying up again this week. It's again with the value we can pay up here this week. It's a pretty good solid floor. It's gonna be Mahomes, Allen, Herbert. That's probably it. And Hill.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think we've really discussed some of these high end running backs that we like this week, so this will be pretty interesting to list these. For me, one of my favorite plays on the whole slate is Nick Chubb. They're favored by 7 points over Jacksonville with Mike Glennon, and I think they're going to freaking smoke Jacksonville, and Nick Chubb is going to be the biggest beneficiary there. So I honestly love me some Nick Chubb. You mentioned Booker, obviously, is a really cheap value. If Jacobs is out, let's obviously give that caveat. We're paying close attention to that game because both Jacobs and Todd Gurley are both questionable coming into this week. They haven't really practiced, so it's going to be something that we monitor. Between the two, though, are you Booker over Brian Hill probably?
Yes. Yeah. I want to play the running back that I think is going to win that game. I think the Raiders are going to beat the Falcons. So yeah, I'd be more on Booker than can't blank on Hill.
Okay. So we're probably off the Chargers Buffalo running backs, I would imagine. Wayne Gallman's a little interesting for me in that Giants-Bengals game. I think, if they can play from ahead, which is just a shocking development on how they could ever do that with how poor this team is. But, the Bengals are not working with much either. So I could see a scenario in which they are playing from ahead and Wayne Gallman can get in the end zone. So I do kind of like him a bit. Here's something to talk about that we haven't really broke down. So this Titans-Colts game, DeForest Buckner has COVID, and he's out this week. So we took advantage of that defensive line matchup last week where Henry had the upper hand there. And I'm wondering if this is going to be a type of game that we see him kind of flourish as well with DeForest Buckner being out and, that game script potentially going his way. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, that's actually quietly going to be one of the better games of the week, actually, too. Both teams coming at 7-3. He took advantage of Brandon Williams and Calais Campbell being out last week. He took full advantage of that. And I could see him doing the same thing right there with DeForest Buckner not being there. And I think his ownership's not even that high either. I'll have to take a look at that later, but I can't even imagine it being over 10%. So it's another one of those spots where he's going to go under owned and what could be another smash spot for him just with that big piece missing for that Colts defensive line.
Absolutely. So the Browns-Jags, I obviously said I love Chubb. I think he's one of the better plays on the slate. How do you feel about him? Have you dug into him at all?
Yeah, so looking at the numbers, of course, weather kind of precipitated things in Cleveland. They had the most wicked 3-game homestand I've ever seen. It was just rain upon rain upon rain. But the Browns in that homestand ran the ball on 79% of their plays. What are they going to do this week? You know what I mean? They have no reason. They don't need Baker to win this game. All they got to do is just use Hunt and Chubb, and Chubb's been the more efficient runner. So Chubb is in such a great spot. Browns are running the ball at the second highest rate in the league. I don't see them changing that. This is it. Jesse nailed it. This is a great spot for Nick Chubb this week.
Yeah, I love him in this game. And then obviously the two running backs in this next game, kind of one that we've already broke down, the Panthers and Vikings game. Do you have any strong leans on either of these guys? I think obviously Dalvin Cook is in a really good spot again, but we also mentioned the fact that if Thielen's out, that Jefferson ownership or potential kind of opens up a bit. So, do you want to get Jefferson and Cook in the same lineup? Do you want to play? I think that Dalvin Cook, Robbie Anderson stack could be a nice little mini stack there. But, what are you feeling for this game for the running backs?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to do a Cousins, Cook, Jefferson stack in the case of Thielen's out, it's like we talked about before. Their weaponry is so condensed that you know where the ball's going to. I mean, it's not going to Chad Beebe. It's not going to BZ Johnson. It's going to a pretty select few people there. I mean, it's there's no secrets. So, I mean, that stack could be pretty viable. I mean, again, until they price Dalvin Cook correctly, just keep rolling them out. That's my theory on that.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it with Christian McCaffrey last year. I mean, everybody's like, he's getting too high. He's getting too high. He's getting too high. Yeah, then he scores over 30 points every single week. And, if you can start a DFS lineup with a guaranteed 30 points in your lineup, you should be taking that, 9 times out of 10. So I do kind of like that. I wasn't really, I didn't find myself selecting, submit when I had Dalvin there towards the top because he is getting pretty pricey. But now that I'm thinking about this, I really do kind of like that Robbie Dalvin stack there. So let's move on to the other games. Obviously, Ahmad is out. Do we like anybody? I kind of am just going to skip over this game for myself. I'm not going to play anybody there. I don't think.
We'll talk about one guy coming up.
Okay. Well, then I'll just let you list them because I'm kind of running out of options here as far as who I like at running back.
Yeah, running back's good. Let's go to receiver. Yeah, because, I mean, kind of similar to how Keenan Allen went off last week. I think there's a similar guy we're going to talk about in a few seconds that could do the same thing too, because who the Jets got in the secondary? You got Lamar X Jackson, the other Lamar.
Ooh, yeah, it's a good call. It's a good call. I didn't think about that, especially if Tua sits. So, all right. So let's just go down the wide receivers here. Ridley, if these guys are out. Keenan Allen, this is the game that has most of these options. We got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Diggs. I think I like Diggs the most out of this, like all the wide receivers to play this week. If you had to give me one, I think it'd be Diggs. That's just my personal preference. And then, just obviously Beasley and Gabriel Davis are in play as well. Nobody I'm loving in any of these other games besides the Carolina Vikings game. Obviously, we kind of mentioned Robbie and Jefferson as being definitely viable in that game. And then, we kind of broke down the Chiefs and Buccaneers options on the passing game. So I think all of those guys are in play. Is there anybody else that I'm missing? Because, I guess some of the cheap value in Jacksonville, I guess, to stack with Chubb. That'd be a good call there.
Yeah, that's definitely in play. Guess my concern there is Mike Glennon is starter too, but I mean, hey, if you need to fill in the lineup and you have some extra, if you need to have a cheap guy, they're there for you. I mean, they're there. Devontae Parker, I mean, like we were just saying, Who do they got in that Jets secondary? It's nobody. And again, Jesse's right on that call. I like him with Tua. I love him if Fitzpatrick goes, and it looks like Tua is going to start, but just keep an eye on that one for sure.
He's 5,900.
Yeah, I'll get him in. If it fits in there, we're going.
Oh yeah, I agree with that one wholeheartedly.
Especially with the injuries to that running game too. I mean, Myles Gaskin. I mean, I know he comes off IR this week, but I just don't even know. He's probably going to be limited. Even Ahmed being out, I just feel like the Dolphins could air this ball out, and they should. I mean, there's nobody in that secondary that's going to be able to stop them.
Absolutely. All right, let's finish things out with the tight end position. So for me, Hurst has not played or practiced all week. If he plays, I like him in this game. If Julio sits, I hate to give all these caveats about, if this guy, there's so many different types of options, but we have somebody chiming in saying, does the Steelers game being postponed affect fantasy? I mean, from a season long perspective, it does. I wasn't really going to the Steelers-Ravens game for DFS purposes anyways. So it doesn't really impact things on my end unless you feel differently.
I mean, if I was going to play anybody, it's just the target monster, Deontay Johnson. He just gets double-digit targets every week. I mean, that would have been the only guy I was probably going to touch. Even if that game was on the Thanksgiving slate, I wanted no part of Gus Edwards. No, straight no. Deontay Johnson was going to be the play for me on that. But no, I mean, from the season-long perspective, I mean, we don't even know if this game's even going to play on Tuesday. That's just where it's at right now. Because if that game doesn't even end up going on Tuesday, that's going to have to be something that owners have to consider too. I mean, they got to start weighing decisions. I mean, if they have guys that they bench that are going to be playing on Sunday, in lieu of these guys are going to be playing on Tuesday, and that game gets moved, they're really screwing themselves in the sense that they're going to just have nobody going.
Yep. So, it is. He keeps commenting and say he sat Brandon Cooks, and now he has to play AB and Godwin. Honestly, you could have worse options. We're into week 12 here, so I know it's a bit disappointing to miss out on that Brandon Cooks game a little bit yesterday. He didn't blow up though, so it's not like you were completely torn apart. But playing AB and Godwin, I don't think you could be in a terrible spot there. So I think you should be all right. But from a DFS perspective, I was kind of out on that Steelers and Ravens game anyways. Just make sure you're hedging your bets and playing who you think are the safest options. And if your league commissioner does not allow you to give substitutes for this Tuesday game, do not put them in your lineup from my perspective. I think you're definitely better off playing another option if you have one. So let's keep the train rolling on the tight ends that we started here. Hunter Henry, we kind of mentioned how he could be in play there, but we don't love it. Tight end, I'm just going to be honest this week. It's kind of a dumpster fire. So there's too many games that are like potential blowouts for the teams that have good matchups. Like, for instance, Hooper would have been an unbelievable option this week, I think. But I just have Chubb too many spots, and I think that this game could blow up, and I think his floor could be like 2 or 3 targets. And I don't know that I want to take a shot on somebody like him, even though he could be really cheap. From the Vikings standpoint, we did mention, I'm starting to kind of warm up to the idea of playing Rudolph maybe with Irv Smith being out and Thielen being out. Now, if Thielen plays, probably not going to go there, but I definitely am warming up to that option if Thielen is out. Otherwise, man, oh man, this is kind of a dumpster fire. One name I did want to mention, and actually maybe 2 names from the wide receiver and tight end perspective. Against the Saints, they've been terrible against tight ends all year, and I think Noah Fant could be a play. Judy hasn't practiced all week. I don't know if you saw that, but if Judy sits, Patrick and or Fant could be in blow-up spots, potentially in a negative game script for them. Well, I guess positive for them, but a negative point perspective, whereas they're 6-point underdogs. They could lead them to throw it around. We've seen Drew Lock's propensity to just chuck it. So, and he has really funneled those targets over the tight end position as well in his short time there. So I do like Noah Fant quite a bit. And then you obviously mentioned Kelsey. One other cheap name I kind of want to mention was Jordan Reed. The Rams have been really bad against tight ends this year, and I just think he could be in play there in a potential game script where they might need to pass it a little more frequently than usual, and that could lead to having a potential Jordan Reed touchdown game. Otherwise, I'm not loving a whole lot of tight end options unless you're seeing something that I'm not.
Yeah, it's funny. Now that we talk about it, I'm getting a little bit fuzzy for some of these other guys. I mean, I guess if you, like, we're just talking about the Dolphins' perspective, I mean, just with the interest they have in their backfield, you would think they're going to throw a little bit more. It puts Gesicki on my radar a little bit. I like it. I don't love it, but we just saw Hunter Henry nailing for a touchdown. I mean, check against tight ends they've been vulnerable. I mean, it's a spot where I think Gesicki could see a decent day here. Again, it's not the sexiest play, but one where it's not going to break your bank either.
Yeah, so I don't really have a whole lot else to add on the tight end front. Unless you do, I think we can kind of close things out here. I think we've just about hit our time mark that we typically do, so I think this is a good stopping point.
Yeah, I can only talk about tight ends so much. Oh, correct. Yeah, it's been a dumpster fire all year, not even just this week.
Yeah, you're right. You are
It's
right
been
about that.
awful.
That pretty much closes us out for this week 12 edition of DFS Discourse. We hope that you are able to follow some of this advice and lead you to the promised land. We are going to be closely monitoring these injuries, obviously, that can drastically change some things. I think we did a good job of breaking down how it could change things and where we could be pivoting if we get some of these injury news and notes coming out later today. So keep an eye out on that. Otherwise, good luck to everyone. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you for the few comments that we had in the comment chat. That actually makes the interaction a little more fun. So for week 12, I guess that just about does it for the DFS Discourse show. For Joe Andre, I am Jesse Clark. You can find me at jcrockett24, and you can find Joe at
FFJVAPHL. Keep an eye out on our articles coming out in the next day, the DFS Darlings, as well as the Snaps Apiece article that will be releasing by tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will have that DFS Darlings article out tomorrow, so make sure you're tuning into that as well. Good luck to everybody. Make sure you're tuning in to Twitter on Sunday for last-minute updates as well. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you guys for tuning in. Peace out.